a little bit of a theme to the next 20 minutes or so. If you saw Four Corners last night, you would have seen a fairly stark portrayal of the way that the two major supermarkets, Woolworths and Coles, do business. And they're certainly not about minimising their profits, and neither should they be. They have shareholders, and their first responsibility is to their shareholders. However, that is not always good news for those who aren't the 300-pound gorillas in the retail industry in Australia. The Retailers Association has come out and effectively said, well, we told you so. We're not real happy with the way they behave, and we thought we'd follow on today by talking to the Executive Director of the Retailers Association, Scott Driscoll. Scott, good morning.
Good morning.
Well, first of all, tell us about the Retailers Association. How many members Australia-wide? Who do you actually represent?
Look, we have several thousand members right across the country, and they're all independent, family-owned businesses of varying sizes, right from, and that's food and non-food, right from your corner store through to a large super IGA or a large Foodworks.
The Four Corners last night, successive government inquiries have really said that, well, there's nothing wrong with the way the majors are behaving. They're certainly serving the interests of their share markets. If your members aren't as good as they are, surely it's just a case of, well, tough.
Yeah, look, that is the simplistic way I think that the ACCC took a view of this as well, but there's a whole lot more at play, and it's government legislation that's been in place over successive governments that has allowed this sort of market domination. We're talking about an 80% concentration in the supermarket sector for Coles and Woolworths. Now, in other countries that would be illegal. In countries like the US and the UK, they've got limitations of 25% market control to stop the very sort of thing that we're dealing with here, which is we've got the highest food inflation rate in the OECD. I mean, these are all the sort of flow-on effects that you have when the governments have had their hands off the wheel, and companies, as you point out in your introduction, will go after the dollar. There's no doubt about it. That's what they're built to do.
What do you mean the highest food inflation rate in the OECD?
Oh, well, we have that great honour of, in Australia, having the highest rate of food inflation in the entire OECD. We are also, and that, basically the Western world, we're also the only country in Australia where our food inflation rate outstrips our general rate of inflation.
So you're saying that food prices are going up, well, obviously above the rate of inflation, but are they going up because the cost of production is rising, or are they going up because these two supermarket giants, despite telling us how cheap they are, actually aren't?
Well, look, I think the latter, because if you look at the Four Corners report last night, which is, as you said, saying what we've been saying for a long time, cost of production may be going up, but they're not. Those costs aren't being allowed to be passed on to Australian farmers and producers. They are still getting the same returns or same margins as they were getting over a decade ago. The example was very blatant with regard to the fellow last night talking about his pumpkins. I mean, he's getting $250 a tonne at the farm gate, and Coles and Woolworths are on selling that at the retail outlet for $2,500 a tonne. Now, that's quite a handsome increase in profits. The prices have obviously gone up over that time, but the farmer's getting no more. So who do you think's making the money? Well,
the silly question here for mine is, if there is that level of profit, if it's 250 tonnes at the farm gate and $2,500 at the store, you could happily take 250 at the farm gate. You would think, sell it for 1,250 somewhere else. You'd be massively undercutting the majors. Isn't that a business that someone should be getting into?
Well, look, that's very much where we're trying to push now, because unfortunately you can't trust the government or the ACCC to do anything about this. We as an independent retail sector are sort of realising that the hard way, and for the good of Australian consumers, this duopoly, though, needs to be broken. You cannot sustain a supermarket sector in a country where you've basically got it tied up between a duopoly. And is there a business opportunity out there? Sure there is. But it's an awful lot of, behind the eight ball to overcome when you've actually got this sort of market domination. These guys have got strong, massive contracts in place, and it's a big risk for a farmer to actually stick his head up and say, I'm going to go it alone, I'm going to go and try to find some producers, some retailers, some independent retailers, and only supply to them, because he will be cut out of the food chain entirely, as again you saw in Four Corners last night, by the big guys who have the volume.
Well, you say that, but I mean, once again, this is anecdotal. And by the way, I need to do out myself here. I did work for Woolworths for a couple of years before I got into this business. But getting back to that, you say that, but farmers still sign those contracts. And I have to say, anecdotally, my experience is that the farmers who don't sign the contracts and either do find independent retailers or indeed form a cooperative within an area and create, if you like, their own shopping chain where they sell their products, they actually, in the end, have better profit margins and do better. But it's a matter of getting away from, it seems like the safety blanket of having the deal with the supermarkets, no matter how oppressive it might be, and actually going, well, we've got good produce. If enough of us get together, we can open our own shops and go forward.
I guess this is the question, can it be done? Yes, it can. Is it an enormous task? Sure it is, because these are farmers. These aren't retailers. These are family-owned businesses where they're running their farms. Independent retailers support Australian farmers. I mean, this is why I'm so vocal about supporting Australian farmers and producers, even though I'm from the retail sector, because in essence, if we don't have those viable farms, our retailers aren't going to trot off to Asia and South America the same way we see Coles and Woolworths doing more and more to sign up for massive contracts where they'll have supply agreements in place at cheaper prices for cheaper goods that aren't of the same standard as Australians. So, can the farmers do it? Is it really their role? They're farmers and producers. I mean, do they have to go across Australia and do this? Or should the government really be protecting consumers and saying, we're going to wake up to the same thing that the rest of the world woke up to, countries like the US and the UK years ago, and not let this domination of the Coles and Woolworths duopoly continue? And, we're going to start to wake up to some of their tricks. I mean, 2%, 3% used to be the sorts of margins you'd get out of supermarkets in days gone by. We saw statistics last night on the Four Corners program talking upwards of 40% margins that these guys are pushing onto the producers.
I certainly would have liked that when I was running shops, I can tell you. But getting back to it, I mean, first of all, retail isn't rocket science. There's no reason why a farmer shouldn't do it. But in the end, if the government was to act, and with the 80% dominance that the pair have got at the moment, and it's not just grocery and fresh food, it's also booze and petrol and so on, if they were to go, say, the American way and knock it back to 25% of market share and that's your lot, there would be an awful lot of mum and dad share investors who'd be massively disadvantaged by that.
I don't agree. I mean, I think, Woolworths and Coles have proven that they've got a very successful business. And, you mentioned those other things about, alcohol and so forth. But, I mean, you're also going to throw in pokies. You're going to throw in now credit cards that Woolworths have launched this year. This week, you've got some separate businesses there that, if they are in your business that you're in at the moment in media, cross-media ownership laws would have pulled them up years ago from the grab that they've got of consumer dollars. The diversity that's there, there is nothing to suggest that those businesses couldn't continue viably and prosper on their own. But this domination, this grab, I mean, at the end of the day, when Woolworths this week announced it's now going to rack up credit accounts against people by way of credit cards that will track your spend so you can be target marketed. People are now going to go out and work for Coles and Woolworths when they're in their daily job, because every last dollar is going to go to them. Okay, all right. So what is the way through this? Does the Retailers Association pressure the government, or does the Retailers Association, try to excite the Australian consumer to your arguments? Absolutely both. Absolutely both is what we've committed ourselves to. I have conversations with good people like yourself in the media every day, highlighting this point. As I said, Four Corners, I think, have picked up on what we've been saying. We'd spoken to Four Corners in the lead up to their program, and we were very pleased with the outcome that they generated. But certainly, the Australian public are the ones that can vote with their feet, and if they want to make sure that they're not going to have a duopoly that is going to ultimately, in a couple of years' time, be sourcing more and more and more goods from overseas because Australian producers simply don't exist. So you're going to have less choice, higher prices, lesser product, from overseas, they need to start to diversify their shopping spend. We're not saying turn your back entirely on supermarkets. We're saying diversify. Where you've got a specialist butcher or a specialist fruit and vegetable person or a specialist whatever in your area, start supporting them as well. Start supporting and breaking up your shop, because you'll get better deals, you'll get better service, you'll get better quality. People need to change their habit, and that is the biggest thing to ask people to do, change their shopping habit.
Absolutely. Scott, thanks very much.
Pleasure.
Scott Driscoll, their Executive Director of the Retailers Association. If you'd like to check out their website, it is all the W's, of course, qrtsa.com.au.